It that alters sanity greets you. I'd wanted to get this video done once version 1.3 post-release patch is stabilized. Then other things happened, including making this new avatar, so this topic was delayed. Part of my motivation to making this video is to understand the new laws that were introduced so I can plan a path for a campaign. As in the past, I'll upload the slides as a PDF. I repeat the disclaimer that not everything is represented on these slides. For instance, there's a new modifier so POPs will support ending migration if there's too much unemployment. In addition to the new laws version 1.3 introduced, the new agitators feature brings some changes to ideologies. I have selected a few old slides where the ideology changes made a difference. The PDF will have all the slides. For this video, I've picked out a few. Version 1.3 introduces more ideologies to get your country out of a traditional economy and into a modern agrarian one. Provided you have agitators in your borders, there are more possibilities to get out of this early game state. Take the protectionist, someone who believes domestic industries and international trade should be closely monitored and regulated by the state. That requires a more centralized approach to the economy than noble traditions dictate. Switching between agrarianism and interventionism has agitators on both sides of the debate. Fittingly, communists want the means of production to exist and be the center of the economy, while Luddites don't want the machines to exist, let alone be important. Historically, Luddites were 19th century English textile workers who opposed machines devaluing their labor to the point of destroying the machines. Technology producing goods faster and cheaper with less skilled labor goes against the interests of those who spent their life honing their craft. That's a conflict still occurring today, with Hollywood writers and actors going on strike against the threat of AI replacing them. Two leader ideologies now have a strong opinion on secret police versus guaranteed liberties. This too is a conflict still occurring in our time, on the topic of end-to-end encryption for digital services. Speaking of which, those two leader ideologies will pitch in to debate censorship too. What is a humanitarian? Someone who believes every man, woman, and child should be guaranteed some inalienable and non-negotiable rights by the state. Contrast to the authoritarian who believes strong leaders are more important than caring about every little concern of the weak. The humanitarian leader also has a say on child labor. On a side note, version 1.3 corrected the oversight that you could have compulsory primary school in the law, but no schools for them to attend. Now, on to the new laws. One of the larger changes to version 1.3 is splitting serfdom from labor rights. Who owns the land is a separate matter to how factory workers are treated. Put simply, this decides who owns the land and thus who feeds the nation: aristocrats, corporations, farmers, or state bureaucracy. These laws determine which ownership production method your farms use. These tooltips are screenshots from a level 1 livestock ranch. Commercialized agriculture doesn't replace the aristocrats, but does add capitalists who split the decision-making and profits with the nobles. Homesteading replaces half the aristocrats with farmers. The two ownership methods under collective agriculture completely throw away all aristocrats for either bureaucrats or farmers. Before, getting rid of serfdom was a fairly steep pill to get the landowners to swallow, going from a strongly approved to neutral stance. Now you can ask them to accept tenant farmers instead to get out of serfdom while still keeping the aristocrats somewhat happy. You're not taking the land away from them. They just have to compete with each other to retain their workforce. Intelligentsia and abolitionist leaders like this as serfdom is slavery in disguise. If you want to jump straight from serfdom to commercialized agriculture, that's about as difficult as it used to be going from serfdom to serfdom banned. The trade unions no longer care about this topic as it's a strictly rural matter. But they're an interest group with influence without much influence in the early game, which is when this debate will happen. Industrialists are happy as they'll get a piece of the pie at the aristocrats' expense. Market liberals believe in the invisible hand of the free market, so insist the land should be run like a business. To go to commercialized agriculture via tenant farmers is a modest jump. The intelligentsia won't be around to push this since their concern is already resolved. The farmers are free to choose where to work. The farmers still want this, presumably since corporations treat them as valuable labor instead of expendable lowborns. Going from tenant farmers to homesteading is a direct confrontation between landowners and rural folk. The farmers are saying those willing to work on the land should have the legal right to own it. Obviously, the aristocrats don't take that nicely. Going to homesteading after making it to commercialized agriculture is slapping the industrialists. They worked hard to have the law changed to benefit them, and now the law is slipping out of their favor so farmers can run the farms? Now, try to get to collectivized agriculture from homesteading, and even the rural folk are against that. The only people who think of this are hardcore orthodox socialists. Communists believe in Marx's vision of a bottom-up revolution driven by the working class to achieve a more equal society. Vanguardists believe in Lenin's vision of top-down revolution driven by an intellectual elite that can comprehend class consciousness. A more reasonable path is to start from tenant farmers. Then you'll have the rural folk on your side. If you want this to be a peaceful transition, the power brokers need to be low in influence. Marxism isn't exactly concerned with pacifism. If you're up for a bloody revolution, how about jumping straight from serfdom into communism? You'll have the intelligentsia on your side. This is Lenin's flavor of the communist revolution. Next, version 1.3 added the industry banned economy system. In my previous video, I didn't go into the endgame alternatives to capitalism, so this next section will cover that. Starting from agrarianism. Nobody wants to go to industry banned other than the Luddites themselves. Yes, even the rural folk don't believe in the absolute refusal to use automation. Remember, communists want to seize the means of production, not destroy it. What if you started from interventionism? Rural folk will stay out of the debate, and you'll have anarchists on your side. Not exactly a significant improvement. How about starting from laissez-faire? Well, now this looks like a normal law change struggle. Industrialists doing whatever they want riles up rural folk and trade unions so much they'll take the extreme stance of no machinery. The communists find both laws to be equally distasteful, so won't participate in the debate. What about cooperative ownership? Again, if you start from agrarianism, the rural folk will not like moving away from an economy, putting them in the spotlight. Trade unions like it, as factory workers getting a fair share of the machine's output sounds great to them. Note, this is one area the Marxists and Leninists have a difference in passion. Orthodox communists want the workers to be in control, while vanguardists would prefer the government is in charge. Going from interventionism to cooperative ownership is a compromise that Luddites can get behind. The machines are still the center of the economy, but at least the output goes to compensating the skilled labor that lost out. Better that than it all going to the rich few who purchased the machines in the first place. Going from cooperative ownership to command economy, only vanguardists would like that. Communists are ambivalent whether the working class controls the means of production directly or via a government that ought to be formed from the working class. Leninists have a more explicit opinion on hierarchy. Version 1.3 added another couple laws for distribution of power. For campaigns where you don't want to go for democracy, your options were limited prior to this version. Single-party state is the new upgrade for authoritarian regimes added in version 1.3. If you're stuck with autocracy, it's very easy to pull off that upgrade by the time the landowners have been reduced in power. Technocracy is another new law added in version 1.3. The same interest groups as before will be involved in this debate, but the landowners will really dislike this change. Who is this positivist that strongly supports this transition? An ardent believer of reason and ability, that both monarchy and democracy are mistakes, that statecraft should be conducted scientifically, experiments, measurements, statistics, and logic, instead of superstitious divine rights, baseless sentimentality, or the whims of the herd. Contrast that with the fascist, who is all about sentimentality, a desperate love of the nation, the ardent belief that the highest purpose of a citizen is to be a cog of the state, which will unleash the spirit of the nation to leave its mark on history. That's everything the technocrat hates: superstition, sentiment, and people power. Still, the positivist of VIC-3 will take a single-party state over monarchy or democracy. Like a technocracy, the single-party state involves no voting and power is obtained with some sort of competency instead of dynastic inheritance. To get to technocracy from census voting, this is mainly a positivist and vanguardist desire. They both desire competent people to hold power, but for rather different motives. Authoritarians would prefer someone more predictable be in charge of power instead of power changing hands due to votes. They'd still prefer one man to be in charge, or at least a single party state. Note that the intelligentsia are against this as they believe in the intelligence of the literate voters. Meantime, industrialists are neutral in this transition. It would be another matter if you started from Wells voting, though. What would it take to go from an autocracy to anarchy? The defeat of traditional power brokers, landowners, intelligentsia, and industrialists. While they may not have strong feelings for the dictatorship, they'd much rather there was some political structure than the complete absence of one. Trade unions are the only mainstream interest group that will take this transition. What interest group will end up taking the anarchist mantle? Incidentally, if you start from universal suffrage, anarchists have no allies whatsoever. Trade unions are perfectly happy to have a voice in an organized fashion. They don't want pure chaos. State atheism is the last new law in version 1.3. It's the ultimate insult to the devout interest group. Belief in any religion is illegal under this law. The intelligentsia are lukewarm towards it when starting from state religion. Note that atheists are not alone in this agenda. Positivists feel the exact same way, as does the orthodox communist to a lesser degree. Vanguardists don't care. They don't have a truly equal society in mind in the first place. They're not going to raise a fuss about what the people believe in. To go from total separation to state atheism is to have the intelligentsia against you. Mandating everyone to not believe in religion is trampling on freedom, which goes against the intelligentsia way. Also, note that the leaders who really want atheism are also fairly happy with total separation anyway. That concludes this round of slides. Feedback below would be appreciated. I make no guarantee I'll be quick to respond to feedback or requests for correction, but I do intend to renew these slides as Victoria 3 is patched across the future. That Alta Sanity thanks you for your time.